The article called him self-made. I made him. I taught him the math he used to build his company. He erased me from his story. True off my chest. I've been sitting on this for 5 years. 5 years of watching interviews, reading articles, seeing his face on magazine covers. 5 years of biting my tongue while he told the world a story that erased me completely from his life. I'm done being quiet. The beginning. Last Tuesday, I was scrolling through LinkedIn during my lunch break, something I rarely do anymore, when I saw the article that finally broke something inside me. The headline read, "Self-made at 28, How One Man Rose from Nothing to Build a $50 million Tech Empire." My stomach dropped before I even clicked on it. I knew. Somehow, I already knew. There he was. The kid I'd spent 3 years of my life trying to save. The kid who used to sit across from me at a wobbly library table, crying because he couldn't understand quadratic equations. The kid whose college essay I helped rewrite 17 times until it sang. The kid who hugged me so hard when he got his acceptance letter that he cracked my back. The article was glowing. It talked about his difficult childhood in a low-income household, his remarkable determination to succeed against all odds, and his self-taught approach to learning that would later define his innovative thinking. Self-taught. I read that word 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. I spent 3 years of my life saving his. Hundreds of hours. I believed in him when no one else did. Now he tells the world he did it alone. How it started. Let me take you back 10 years. I was 35, in my 8th year of teaching high school math at a public school in a working-class neighborhood. I loved teaching, even when it broke my heart, which was often. The kid showed up in my sophomore geometry class in September. He was 15, skinny as a rail, and had this way of making himself invisible, slumping low in his seat, never making eye contact, never raising his hand. His test scores from freshman year were abysmal. His file was thick with notes, does not apply himself. Seems distracted. Potential behavioral issues. I'd seen 100 kids like him. Most of them, the system failed. They'd slip through the cracks, drop out, end up in dead-end jobs or worse. It was the great tragedy of public education. We didn't have the resources to catch everyone who was falling. But there was something about this kid. I noticed it during the 3rd week of class when I was explaining the Pythagorean theorem. Most of the students were zoned out, but he was watching me. Really watching. And when I paused to ask if there were questions, he almost raised his hand. I saw it, this tiny movement, his fingers twitching on the desk, before he caught himself and looked away. After class, I asked him to stay behind. He tensed up immediately, probably expecting detention or a lecture. Instead, I just asked him a simple question: "Do you actually understand what we covered today?" He stared at his shoes for a long moment. Then, quietly, "No. I don't understand any of it." How long has that been true? Since like 6th grade, I guess. 6 years. This kid had been drowning for 6 years, and no one had thrown him a rope. I made a decision that day that would change both our lives. I just didn't know how much it would cost me. "What if I helped you catch up?" I said. "After school. Free tutoring. We'd start from the beginning and work our way up." He looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "Why would you do that?" I didn't have a good answer then. I still don't, really. Maybe I saw something in him that reminded me of myself at that age. Maybe I was tired of watching potential evaporate. Maybe I just needed to believe that one person could make a difference. "Because I think you're smarter than your grades show," I said. "And I think you deserve a chance to prove it." He showed up the next day. And the day after that. And the day after that. The 3 years. What followed was the most exhausting, rewarding, and ultimately heartbreaking project of my life. We started with basics, fractions, decimals, the foundational math he'd never properly learned. I'd stay after school 3 days a week, sometimes 4, sitting with him in my empty classroom while the janitors vacuumed the hallways. When the school closed, we'd move to the public library. When the library closed, sometimes we'd sit in the parking lot of a McDonald's, using their Wi-Fi and working through problems on my laptop. His home life was chaos. His mother worked 2 jobs and was rarely home. His father had left when he was 7. He had 3 younger siblings that he often had to take care of, which meant homework came last, if it came at all. The apartment was small, loud, and not conducive to studying. So I adapted. I bought him notebooks and pencils because he couldn't afford them. I gave him my old graphing calculator. When he needed a quiet place to work, I let him use my classroom during lunch. By the end of that first year, something remarkable happened. He passed geometry with a B+. It was the first B he'd ever earned in a math class. But I wasn't satisfied with survival. I saw something bigger in him now, a quick mind, a hunger to understand, a determination that had been buried under years of neglect and circumstance. I wanted to aim higher. Junior year, we expanded. Math wasn't his only weakness, his reading comprehension was years behind, and his writing was functional at best. So I started bringing English materials too. We read together, articles, short stories, eventually novels. I taught him how to structure an argument, how to find evidence, how to make his words mean something. I remember one night, around 9 p.m., we were sitting in that McDonald's parking lot working on a practice essay. He'd written something about his father leaving, and it was raw, unpolished, but achingly real. I looked up from the paper and saw tears streaming down his face. "I've never told anyone that stuff before," he said. "You don't have to include it if you're not comfortable." "No," he said, wiping his eyes roughly. "I want to. I want people to know where I came from." The irony of that moment haunts me now. The sacrifices. By senior year, we were working on something even more ambitious, getting him into a top university. His grades had transformed. He was pulling A's and B's across the board. His teachers were stunned. This was the same kid they'd written off as hopeless? But grades alone wouldn't be enough. He needed SAT scores, extracurriculars, recommendation letters, and most importantly, he needed scholarship money because there was no way his family could pay for college. I became obsessed. I don't use that word lightly. My girlfriend at the time, we'd been together 2 years, started calling me married to that kid. She wasn't wrong. I spent weekends driving him to SAT prep sessions I'd found for free at community centers. I paid for his SAT registration out of my own pocket, twice, because his first scores weren't strong enough. I took him on college visits, burning through vacation days and gas money to show him campuses he'd never even dreamed of seeing. My relationship ended because of it. She gave me an ultimatum one night: "It's me or this project you've turned this kid into." I chose him. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe I'd lost perspective. But I was so close to proving something, to myself, to the world, to every teacher who'd ever given up on a struggling kid. And here's what I need you to understand. I never expected anything in return. Not then. I wasn't doing it for gratitude or recognition. I was doing it because I believed, with every fiber of my being, that this kid could become something extraordinary if someone just gave him the chance. The college essay took us 2 months. 17 drafts. I'd push him to dig deeper, to find the real story beneath the surface, to make admissions officers see the fighter he was. The final version was beautiful. His words, his story, but shaped and refined through countless hours of collaboration. When the acceptance letter came, full scholarship to a top-tier university, I cried harder than he did. His mother hugged me so tight I thought she'd break my ribs. She said, "You saved my son. You saved all of us." That was 10 years ago. I haven't spoken to her since he became famous. I wonder if she remembers. Update 1. The success and the silence. After he left for college, we kept in touch, at first. He'd call every few weeks, email me his papers, ask for advice about classes. Freshman year was hard for him. He felt out of place among students from wealthy backgrounds, students who'd had every advantage he'd lacked. I talked him through imposter syndrome, reminded him he'd earned his spot, encouraged him to keep pushing. Sophomore year, the calls became less frequent. He was finding his footing, making friends, discovering his passion for computer science. I was proud. A little lonely, but proud. This is what success looked like. He didn't need me anymore. Junior year, he stopped calling altogether. I'd send occasional emails, just checking in, "Hope you're doing well," and receive brief, polite responses. "Things are great, super busy, thanks for reaching out." Then even those stopped. I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up. They move on. They forge their own identities. I was a chapter in his life, not the whole book. That's healthy, I thought. That's how it should be. After graduation, I heard through the grapevine that he'd landed a job at a tech company in Silicon Valley. A few years later, I read that he'd left to start his own company. Then the company got funded. Then acquired. Then he was worth 10 million. Then 20. Then 50. And throughout all of it, every interview, every profile, every podcast appearance, not once did he mention me. Not once did he acknowledge that a high school teacher had pulled him out of the darkness. The article called him self-made. I made him. Not alone, but I was there when no one else was. And he erased me from his story. Update 2. The encounter. 2 years ago, I tried to reach out. Not to ask for anything, God, never that, but just to reconnect. To see how he was doing. Maybe, foolishly, to feel like those 3 years had meant something. I found a contact email on his company's website and sent a message. Nothing elaborate. Just, I don't know if you remember me, but I was your math teacher and tutor in high school. I've been following your success and I'm so proud of what you've accomplished. Would love to catch up sometime if you're ever in the area. 3 weeks passed. Then I got a response, not from him, but from his assistant. Thank you for reaching out. Unfortunately, he receives many requests and doesn't have time to respond to unsolicited messages. Best wishes. Unsolicited. I read that word a dozen times. I'd spent 3 years of my life on this kid, and now I was unsolicited. But I'm not easily deterred. I'm a teacher. Persistence is in my DNA. So when I heard he was giving a keynote speech at a tech conference in my state, I bought a ticket. It cost more than I could afford, but I needed to see him. I needed to look him in the eye and, I don't know, remind him I existed. The speech was good. Polished. He talked about resilience, about overcoming obstacles, about the importance of believing in yourself when no one else does. When no one else does. I almost laughed out loud. I believed in him when no one else did. That's literally the story of us. Afterward, there was a networking session. I waited in line for 45 minutes to speak with him. My heart was pounding. Part of me hoped he'd see me and light up. Oh my God, it's you. And we'd hug and catch up and all those years of silence would dissolve. When I finally reached him, I smiled and said, "It's been a long time." He looked at me. Looked right at me. And I saw it, this flicker of recognition, quickly extinguished. Then his face went polite and blank. "I'm sorry," he said. "Do I know you?" He looked right at me and said, "I'm sorry, do I know you?" I taught him the math he used to build his company. I wrote the essay that got him into college. "I was your teacher," I said, my voice suddenly thick. "In high school. I tutored you for 3 years. Another pause. Then, "Oh, right. Yeah. Good to see you." He shook my hand, brief, professional, and turned to the next person in line. I stood there for a moment, frozen. Then I walked out of that conference center and sat in my car and sobbed like I hadn't since my mother's funeral. Update 3. The breaking point. I tried to move on. I really did. I told myself I was being petty, that I should be proud of what he'd become regardless of whether he acknowledged me. I threw myself back into teaching, focused on my current students, tried to find meaning in the work itself. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. 6 months ago, I saw that he'd started a foundation. A non-profit dedicated to, and I wish I was making this up, mentoring underprivileged youth. The website featured testimonials from kids he'd helped, photos of him visiting schools, a mission statement about giving back and believing in potential. He gives speeches about mentorship now, about helping underprivileged kids. The irony is so thick I could choke on it. I watched an interview where he described his philosophy of mentorship. "Every kid deserves someone who believes in them," he said, looking earnestly into the camera. "That's what I'm trying to provide, the guidance and support that can change a life." I had to turn it off. My hands were shaking. The next week, he was on a panel at an education conference, talking about his self-made journey and how he'd taught himself everything through sheer willpower. The moderator asked if there had been any mentors along the way. "Not really," he said. "I mean, there were teachers who were fine, but mostly I just figured things out on my own. I think that's actually been an advantage. It made me more self-reliant." Teachers who were fine. I watched that clip 17 times. Each time hurt more than the last. I don't want his money. I never did. I just wanted him to remember. To acknowledge that someone believed in him when he had nothing. Update 4. The LinkedIn post. I wrestled with what to do for months. My friends told me to let it go. "You know the truth," they said. "That should be enough." But it wasn't enough. Not because I needed validation, but because I couldn't stand the lie. He was building an entire platform around mentorship while pretending the person who mentored him didn't exist. There was something deeply wrong about that. I considered going to the press, but that felt vindictive. I considered reaching out one more time, but I knew how that would end. I considered just staying quiet forever, letting the resentment curdle inside me until I became bitter and small. In the end, I wrote a LinkedIn post. I didn't attack him. I didn't name him. I just told my story. 10 years ago, I was a high school math teacher. One of my students was failing everything, bad home life, no support, headed nowhere good. But I saw something in him. Potential that no one else believed in. For 3 years, I tutored him for free. After school, weekends, summer breaks. We started with basic fractions and ended with SAT prep. I drove him to college visits. I paid for his test registration. I helped him write the essay that got him into a top university on a full scholarship. He graduated. He went into tech. He became successful beyond anything either of us could have imagined. I'm proud of who he became. I really am. I just wish he remembered who helped him get there. To all the teachers out there who pour your hearts into students who need you, I see you. What you do matters. Even if no one ever thanks you for it. I'm not looking for anything. I'm not asking for credit. I'm just saying, mentorship matters. And it's not about recognition, but a simple thank you goes a long way. I taught him everything I could. Except, apparently, gratitude. That's a lesson he'll have to learn on his own. I posted it at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday and went to bed, expecting nothing. By Wednesday morning, it had 50,000 views. By Thursday, 200,000. By Friday, over 1 million. The comments poured in. Other teachers sharing similar stories. People expressing outrage on my behalf. Journalists asking to interview me. And then, the people who knew him started coming forward. His former classmates who remembered me staying after school with him. His college roommate who'd heard him talk about his incredible high school mentor. A cousin who said his mother still had a framed photo of me at his graduation. The dots were connecting. People were figuring out who I was talking about. Screenshots of his self-made interviews were being shared alongside my post. Tech Twitter was in an uproar. Within a week, multiple journalists had reached out for comment. One had done the legwork, found old school records, interviewed his former teachers, even tracked down his mother, who confirmed everything. "That teacher saved my son's life," she was quoted as saying. "I don't understand why he won't acknowledge him. It breaks my heart." The story was about to break whether he acknowledged me or not. Update 5. The Reckoning. His PR team moved fast, I'll give them that. Before the investigative pieces could drop, he released a statement. "It has come to my attention that a former teacher has publicly shared his role in my early education. I want to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank him for his dedication during a difficult time in my life. While I have always tried to project self-reliance as a core value, I recognize that no one truly succeeds alone. I apologize for any impression that I was ungrateful for the help I received. I will be reaching out privately to reconnect and express my appreciation." It was carefully worded, carefully sanitized. It didn't mention me by name. It didn't detail what I'd actually done. It made it sound like I was just another helpful teacher rather than someone who had sacrificed years of his life for a kid everyone else had given up on. The comment section saw right through it. "Corporate non-apology," people wrote. "Only sorry he got caught. His self-made brand is toast." He reached out privately, as promised. An email that was slightly more personal than the public statement, but still felt crafted by lawyers. He thanked me for my contributions to his early development and offered to make a donation to my school in my name. A donation. As if money could fix this. I wrote back, "I don't want your money. I never did. I just wanted you to remember. I wanted the truth." He didn't respond. The aftermath was complicated. His self-made narrative was indeed ruined. Every article about him now included a paragraph about the controversy, about the teacher he'd erased from his success story. His foundation faced scrutiny. How could he preach mentorship while denying his own mentor? But I didn't celebrate. I felt no satisfaction watching his reputation take hits. I'd spent 3 years loving that kid like a son, and some part of me still did. Watching him stumble brought me no joy, only a profound sadness for what we'd lost. Reporters asked if I was glad the truth came out. I told them the truth. I didn't want to destroy him. I just wanted the truth. He could have thanked me privately. He could have mentioned me once in 10 years. Instead, he made me feel like I never existed. That's the part one couldn't forgive. A few weeks later, I got a different kind of message. A handwritten letter, sent to my school. From his mother. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "I don't know what happened to him. The boy you saved would have never forgotten you. Somewhere along the way, he became someone I don't recognize. Thank you for not staying silent. Thank you for reminding him, and me, where he came from." I cried again when I read that. But it was a different kind of crying. Less grief, more release. The aftermath. It's been 3 months since the story broke. He's still successful, $50 million doesn't evaporate because of bad press, but something shifted. The foundation's donations are down. Speaking invitations have dried up. His self-made personal brand, which had been so central to his public identity, is now a liability. Me? I'm still teaching. Same school, same classroom, same barely adequate salary. My LinkedIn post has settled at 2.3 million views. I've gotten hundreds of messages from teachers thanking me for speaking up. A few have shared their own stories, brilliant students who forgot where they came from, mentorships that ended in silence. One message stood out. A former student of mine, not him, a different one, wrote to say, "I just want you to know that I remember everything you did for me. I graduated college last year, and I tell everyone about the teacher who believed in me. Thank you for being that person." I printed that message out. It hangs on my wall now. I think about the kid sometimes. Not who he is now, the millionaire, the CEO, the self-made fraud, but who he was. The skinny 15-year-old crying over quadratic equations. The senior staying up until midnight to perfect his college essay. The young man who hugged me on the day that acceptance letter arrived. I don't know what happened to that version of him. Maybe success corrupted him. Maybe the pressure of maintaining a certain image made him rewrite his own history. Maybe he genuinely convinced himself that he'd done it alone, that the narrative he'd created was the truth. Or maybe gratitude is just harder than it looks. Maybe acknowledging help feels like admitting weakness, especially for someone who built an identity around rising alone. I'll probably never know. He hasn't reached out again. The private reconnection, his statement promised, never materialized beyond that single sterile email. And that's okay. I've made my peace with it, as much as anyone can. Final thoughts. People ask me if I'd do it again. If I knew how this would end, the silence, the erasure, the public reckoning, would I still spend those 3 years? Yes. 1,000 times yes. Because it was never about him. Not really. It was about proving that one person can make a difference. That a kid on the edge of falling through the cracks can be caught. That potential doesn't expire just because circumstances are hard. I succeeded at that. Whatever came after, that's his story to write, his conscience to wrestle with. I'm still teaching. Still tutoring kids who need help. Still staying late, still buying notebooks, still believing in potential that others overlook. The only difference is that now I tell my students, on the first day, wherever you end up, wherever life takes you, remember the people who helped you get there. Success isn't diminished by acknowledging others. It's enhanced. Maybe one day, he'll learn that lesson. Maybe he won't. I taught him everything except gratitude. That's a lesson he'll have to learn on his own. Edit. For those asking, yes, this is real. No, I won't reveal his identity. He knows who he is. That's enough. And for the teachers reading this, don't stop. Don't ever stop believing in your students. Most of them remember. Most of them are grateful. And for the ones who aren't, that's on them, not you. Your work matters. Never let anyone make you feel like it doesn't. Here's what I learned about gratitude. You can teach someone everything except how to say thank you. That's a lesson they have to learn on their own. I spent 3 years of my life saving his. Hundreds of hours. I believed in him when no one else did. Now he tells the world he did it alone. The article called him self-made. I made him. Not alone, but I was there when no one else was. And he erased me from his story. He looked right at me and said, "I'm sorry, do I know you?" I taught him the math he used to build his company. I wrote the essay that got him into college. He gives speeches about mentorship now. About helping underprivileged kids. The irony is so thick I could choke on it. I don't want his money. I never did. I just wanted him to remember. To acknowledge that someone believed in him when he had nothing. So I wrote a LinkedIn post. Didn't attack him. Didn't name him. Just told my story. It went viral. People connected the dots. His self-made narrative crumbled. I didn't want to destroy him. I just wanted the truth. He could have thanked me privately. He could have mentioned me once. Instead, he made me feel like I never existed. That's the part one couldn't forgive. His mother wrote me, "The boy you saved would have never forgotten you." Somewhere along the way, he became someone I don't recognize. I taught him everything except gratitude. That's a lesson he'll have to learn on his own.